Languages through music. Languages through music. Languages through music. Languages through music. Welcome to the Languages Through Music podcast, and special welcome to my very special guest, Maximiliano, aka Mindfarer, magician, mind reader, first magician I've ever had the pleasure of teaching. So welcome, bem-vindo, Maximiliano, to the LTM podcast.
Bonjour. Hello. Tudo bom?
Tudo ótimo. Thank you so much for making time today, because I have the regular questions I ask everybody, but I also have some questions I could only ask you. So would you mind giving us a little intro into what the day-to-day life of a magician, polyglot magician, looks like?
Well, the day-to-day, is it's kind of like jazz. I love jazz, and there's a lot of improvisation. I don't have a privilege in the sense that I don't have a 9 to 5, so every day is different. It depends on whether I'm performing, where I'm performing, and when I'm not performing, I also create magic tricks for magicians. So I spend a lot of my time daydreaming, procrastinating, and eventually working on stuff. So right now I'm writing 2 books as we speak. One for magicians, another one more for the general public, in partnership with a friend of mine who's a psychologist. And so it will be like some sort of discussion between a therapist and a magician, but I also have a background in therapy myself. I'm a hypnotherapist, and so I also think that magic, like music, is a form of therapy in and of itself. So I think that we certainly need a lot more magic and music in this world today.
Never too much, as Luther Vandross left us with. Never too much magic or music. And I'm sure in your therapy background you look into memory a lot, and that's one of the things I'm really curious about, how music really helps us with our memory. So I'd like to know what your earliest music related memory is.
My earliest, at least the one that I can certainly remember and that has marked my life the most is, I can't remember how old I was. I was probably like 7 or 8. I was a friend, family friend, who was an electrician, but also he had a huge villa in the south of France. So I grew up in the south of France. I was born in Brazil, but grew up in the south of France. And he invited us all to obviously show us around his house that he had he'd built up pretty much all by himself. And so he was kind of showing off, basically. I mean, it was a huge villa, and I remember on the first floor he had some sort of home cinema, which was very much unheard of in the 90s, right? So he had like this huge TV, and he also had like a control room for like the sound and lights. Obviously, him being an electrician, that was sort of a piece of cake for him. And so he wanted to show off his huge TV, and so to do so, he put a VHS tape of a concert by Jean-Michel Jarre, who is a French musician and pioneer in electronic music. And so for I can't remember how long the concert was, like maybe 1.5 hours. And for that 1.5 hour that the tape lasted, I was transported to Barcelona, because that's where the concert took place. And wow. I was transported on stage. I was like, I'd never heard that before, this type of music. And that's that's really when I thought to myself, that's what I want to do when I grow up. That's what I want to be. That I couldn't put a word on it at the time. I didn't know what a musician was, or what, being an artist. It's like, what does that even mean? But I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to try and create worlds where people can be transported to a different dimension. And even just thinking about that, I can still remember what it felt like. And every time I listen to that album, which is called Chronology, which is the album that was played at that concert, I can still remember the feeling of listening to that music for the very first time. And to me, that music has not aged at all. It's timeless. So,
Yeah.
and in fact, speaking about that now, I mean, next week is my birthday, and I will be going to Bratislava for the first time. And as it so happens, Jean-Michel Jarre will be playing along with Brian May. And so I've seen him a couple of times live, but yeah, to me, this is just this is kind of like going full circle, especially around my birthday, to see him. It will probably be the last concert of, certainly not his last concert, but it will be the last concert of its kind, because Jean-Michel Jarre is well known for like huge concerts and with millions of people. And obviously nowadays it's a lot more difficult to organize those things, So it will probably be the last concert of its kind. So I look forward to it.
That's amazing. And which languages do you speak? Are you learning, and would you like to speak in future?
So French is my native language. This word sounds a bit strange because obviously I wasn't born in France, but that's a language that I grew up with. So that's a language that I feel the most confident in. Then English, obviously, which I learned first of all at school. Then also I became fluent when I was in high school. I went to Canada. I did an exchange. I had an exchange partner. So I went to Toronto for a few months, and then I went back, and they were still very much in touch with family who there. Then I also learned German at school, but to be perfectly honest with you, I couldn't. I only know a couple of sentences. I didn't really like my time, studying German. So I apologize to any German speakers listening to this, but just could not. It just wasn't for me. I mean, maybe one day I will change, but the fact is, German grammar is so difficult. I mean, the thing is, they put verbs at the end of the sentence, meaning that when you start a sentence, it's like a game of 3D chess. You need to know exactly where you're going, ahead of time. And I'm probably one of the most disorganized people out there. So how could I, and also, if you think that French is difficult because you put gender to objects and you have male and female objects, well, the Germans have 3 genders. They have male, female, and neuter, and then have declinations depending on which part of the sentence the word is placed. And so it just is just far too difficult for my brain. So
I've never studied German, but what gets me is the capitalizing all the nouns.
Oh yes, that as well. Yes, I mean, it's just. I must admit, I'm in admiration for those German speakers. They, obviously they're very much intelligent and very much organized. As far as I'm concerned, I'm glad when I can pick up a pair of matching socks every morning. So
that never happened. I don't remember the last time I had a pair of matching socks, or my own socks, because I lose mine. So everybody in the house gets theirs pilfered. So yeah, it would be interesting to do a study on kind of organized versus kind of more disorganized people and seeing whether the languages you learn or speak have an effect on that. Maybe if we study German, we'd become more organized as people.
Maybe that's what I need right now. Maybe so that I would finish all my projects and within weeks, and yeah, so maybe that's what I need. I don't know.
After Portuguese, German, any other languages that you've studied before? Mandarin
So
once?
so Mandarin. So I've studied a couple of languages through my love life, I guess you could say. So I studied a little bit of Mandarin because I was in a relationship with a Chinese lady for a few years. I went to China as well. Uh, you know, it's the same as German. I only know a couple of sentences. Yeah, the good thing about Chinese or any sort of Asian languages is that most of the time the grammar is very easy. They don't have
Mm,
tenses or conjugation, and the most difficult thing is the sounds. Actually, it's about, especially in Mandarin, understanding or even just grasping the different tones, because you
mhm.
might have different at least four ways of saying ma. It's like ma 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 ma.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to, and they all mean completely different things. And so obviously, you want to make sure that you don't call your mom a horse. So you want to, it's like, but how is it even possible? But curiously enough, and this relating to music, I've heard that um, because Mandarin speakers are so very much tuned to the different sounds, apparently there's a a vast number of people in China who have perfect pitch
What?
because of that.
Well,
Yeah, so it's interesting how languages and music are so intricately related, but
mm.
it also goes to the wiring of our brains. That's it,
Yeah, I actually learned something in my favorite city, Geneva, last week. I was teaching with a guy from Shanghai, and we were talking about music and languages because we were talking using some AI stuff to create music for this show we were working on. And I just assumed that for tonal languages, you just forget about the tones in a song because you're already singing the melody. So I just figured, oh, well, you can't have the tones within a song. So people would just go from context, obviously. And he was like, no. He's like, you keep the tones in the song. And like the better the songwriter is, they'll kind of, make it complementary, the tones with the song. And that just blew my mind. I just never assumed it was possible to put the tones in a song. What are some of your favorite artists to listen to in any language? One that you're learning, one that you've learned before?
so I'm uh, so I've already spoken about my idol, Michel Jarre, but in French, I also, I mean, I think, obviously I don't want to boast about the French language, but the fact is that we call poets, poètes de la chanson française, and certainly we have some people who came up with not only amazing music but also whose lyrics are very close to poetry and literature. And to me, one of my favorites is Serge Gainsbourg, who not only managed to combine success, the commercial success, but also who came up with some of the best lyrics and some of the best music. And sometimes that is unheard of because most people only focus on the most famous songs like Je t'aime moi non plus. That's his most famous one. But he also came up with what I think is the best rock album in French language, which is Melody Nelson.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so people like that. I also listen to, I tend to listen to a lot of different genres, not just in English, but different languages. And I don't always listen to the lyrics. I also like instrumental music. I love jazz. I love, obviously I'm a pianist, so I focus primarily on the piano. But thinking about people like Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, those are all people who, even though they play the same instrument, they manage to come up with their own language. Like I can close my eyes and listen to, if they play the same standard, like Autumn Leaves, for example, I could close my eyes and say, okay, this is Chick Corea playing, this is Keith Jarrett, this is Herbie Hancock, because they came up with their own musical language, and that, they mastered the instrument in order so that now they can just express their soul, through that music. And I think that's what every musician should try and achieve, but that's incredibly hard. That's beyond, playing the scales or knowing the chords and the voicings, but it's about, playing the music with your soul. And I'm not there yet. I'm certainly not there yet, but I would love to be able to get to that stage one day. Maybe in this lifetime, maybe in another one. Who knows? So we'll see.
Those are some giant shoes to step into. I watched Herbie Hancock live for the first time last summer in Italy at Umbria Jazz, and it was just unbelievable. Also at his age, it's like, I really think music gives people more life and more energy, because even in Cabo Verde last month, when I saw Emerto Pascoal, I think he's pushing 90 years old, and he had to sit during some of the show. But he would get up and he would play, and then he would, have a little boogie. And I just thought, wow, to be that old and still able to travel, tour the world, and perform music is just, testament to to how much energy it can inspire in people. It's just incredible. So you've traveled for your magic and your music.
That's right.
Do you feel that being a musician has given you an advantage when learning languages? In any way?
An advantage. So I don't know if it's an advantage, but it's certainly a different perspective. Because music, to me, adding music or combining music and languages certainly adds another dimension. We talked, your first question was about my very first memory of music. And already you could see that there was an emotional attachment to, just a song or an album.
Experience,
of a musician. And I think that if you can combine that with, language learning, or learning of any kind, actually. If you just listen to a song that talks about a particular topic, or that is related to a piece of history, then I think that adding that emotional attachment to that language that you're learning, it certainly makes things a lot easier, because you can just remember certain words or certain expressions, especially when the lyrics are happen to be written pretty well. It's a good way of remembering some useful expressions, and also it's a good way of faking your way into a conversation.
Absolutely.
You might, stop blurting out some poetic phrases and so on, and then people look at you like, whoa, where is that coming from?
I think a good accent can take you so far, because even if someone speaks, knows a lot of the language but just doesn't have the accent, people will think they speak less than they do. But it totally works the other way. If your accent is good, people go, oh, but then they'll have higher expectations of you. But then you're trying to reach them. So it's good and bad, I guess. I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned, I think the first time we met, about abracadabra. Could you give us the etymology of this word again, please?
Yeah, so abracadabra, obviously it's a magic word. evokes a lot of different things to different people. But originally, I mean, and you can look it up, online, and originally it means in ancient Aramaic, and also Hebrew and Hebrew language, it means I create as I speak. Now, as I said, it means different things to different people, but I interpret it as a way of, it's kind of like an ancient message, an ancient wisdom that tells us that by speaking, I mean, we all have different versions of reality. We forget about that, but we all have different versions of reality, and we create it by speaking about it. As we've already touched upon, the language that you speak shapes your reality. Like, for example, if you speak Mandarin, you don't have notion of, I mean, you have a totally different notion of time, because there's no conjugation, there's no tenses. And so for you, the past, present, and future are totally different perspective than, say, a French speaker or an English speaker, because we have conjugation. In Chinese, 我爱你 is, it means, so I love you. But if you translate it literally, it means me to love you. I mean, me love you. And so there's no difference between I loved you, I love you, and I will love you. The tense is only just in the context with a word. If you say me love you yesterday, then yeah, we understand what you're talking about, in which context you're talking about. But that context is almost optional. The action of loving is encapsulated in that timeless frame. So it's a permanent state of being, and I love that. There's another language that we didn't talk about, but I sort of tried to learn for a while, and it was Kiswahili. And if you say something like nakupenda, it's very interesting how that word is actually a sentence, because it's I love you, but it's all encapsulated in that one word. It's like you and I. It's like a universe. It's like you and I, where and the whole action of loving is just encapsulated into one word. As if it was like a block. I think I found it beautiful. So yeah, I can't remember your original question, but certainly, oh yeah, so it was abracadabra. So basically, when you speak about the world, that's the reality you create, and languages certainly shape your reality. But that also means that you have to be careful about the words that you use to create your world, right? So for instance, whenever you tell yourself, well, I can't do that, or even just saying that the earth is flat, well, certainly if you say the earth is flat, that means the earth will be flat. You will be living in a flat world. And if you say, well, I cannot, this is who I am, I cannot do this, or I can't do that, or in my family, this is who we are. Well, I think that, this is, you're basically restricting yourself through the use of language, of those words that you keep telling yourself, either out loud or in your own mind. And as a mind reader, that's what I do. I try to read minds, and that's sort of what I've realized over the years of doing just that, reading people's minds, not just in shows, but also in therapy. And right now, so this is what I'm trying to work on, trying to open people's minds on the idea of either changing their language or learning other languages. Because as a Spanish poet, I can't remember his name, sorry about that, but someone said that learning a language is like adding a new soul. I think that the soul is always in expansion. It's about becoming, and so whenever you learn a new language, you're in that constant state of becoming a new you, right? So right now I am becoming Brazilian thanks to you, because even though that's where I was born, I always thought to myself, well, that I don't know, that's not there certainly was an emotional attachment when I started Portuguese, but it was more of a not negative one, but it was more of an emotional pressure, because thinking to myself, well, that's the language I'm supposed to speak. And for the longest time, I mean, I've talked about the different travels that I've had. I've been to Canada, I've been to Kenya, Tanzania, to China, different countries, but Brazil, I always, and I've had the opportunity, but for lots of reasons, I thought, yeah, I don't know. But now, through your classes, I can just finally see myself, and traveling to all those beautiful places, and also gradually learning what it's like to be, not just to be there, but also to be, Brazilian. And I think it's amazing, so obrigado.
Sid, I really, yeah, I love what you said about, yeah, this kind of mindset thing as well. I think that's why I felt I wanted to include a little bit on that in the masterclass, because it's such a mindset thing. At school, I always told myself, like, I'm terrible at languages. I'm terrible at languages. I'll never learn French. French is impossible. Da, 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 da. And then you just kind of spend all this energy on why something's not going to happen, or if my grades are this bad in French, I'll never be able to learn another language. I think people spend so much time, and even though I was teaching in classrooms, like if people made a mistake, they would make a whole kind of, oh no, about their mistake instead of just like absorbing it and going to the next thing. So yeah, it's just these little things because they just add up, don't they? Like every kind of forehead, palm to face, like that's time that you're giving the mistake, or the kind of putting yourself down about, oh, I should speak this, I don't speak that, why don't I speak this yet? When, yeah, the more time that we can give ourselves that energy of moving in the direction of these various languages, the faster we'll get there. Or if we just tell ourselves we're there already.
That's right. That's right. It's about, just let it go, and, go with the flow. And in a previous life, I used to teach myself. I used to teach French in primary and secondary schools in Glasgow. And that's where I discovered that, I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time, the classes were divided in groups according to the levels, between quotation marks. And so we had, the top class, the sort of middle, and then we had the bottom class, And kids could, they knew exactly what, their level based on the color of the handbook, And so if you had the blue book, that meant you were at the top. If you had the red one, that meant that you were in the bottom class.
Oh, no,
But
that's harsh.
the thing
Red,
is,
that's what the teachers always used to mark up your papers. So the more red
exactly.
you had, it was never a good thing, right?
Exactly. But the thing is that the kids, I mean, first of all, the teachers knew it, because I remember just before going to class, the teacher would say, okay, so right now we're going to have the bottom class. So, all right, okay, so what does that mean? Well, that just means that, we're not going to be able to do it. But, like, that's not really fair. I mean, those poor kids, I mean, I don't know why they went to the so-called bottom class, but right now
Condemn them.
you've already given up, before the classes even started. And then the kids themselves, I remember vividly some kids telling me, well, but, sir, we're sorry, but we're kind of wasting your time because, we're the bottom class, we're, we suck, I'm like, guys, don't be defined by, a label, or certainly don't be defined by the color of your textbook, it's just, all of this is arbitrary, it's all made up anyway. It's all made up by somebody somewhere, maybe probably someone who died a long time ago, and who decided that, we should do, that's the way, a class should be organized, that's the way a lesson should be taught. and then you look at the French textbooks, and it's made up of all sorts of vocabulary lists that people need to learn by rote. And it's like, but we don't even use those words anymore in conversations. Why should they even learn that? Oh, it's because they're going to have an exam in 2 weeks, and so they just need to learn it. Okay, so they'll learn it and they'll forget about it the very next day. So what's the point? But so all I'm saying is that even if you were a bottom at the bottom class of in French or German or whatever language you learned, it's all right. Don't be limited by that. Especially these days, we've got Netflix, it's so easy to travel, and we've got above everything else, we've got Desta with languages through music. Who can teach you any language very rapidly.
That's the plan. That's the plan. I mean, I hope that the masterclass kind of gives people enough tools to get them making their own playlists and finding that confidence and realizing that with a few general guidelines, like they can apply that to any language in the world. And that there are no limits, sem limites, to the languages we can learn in theory. I mean, I've met people who speak dozens, which is to me still a bit far
That's
out.
just showing off.
But yeah, I think, I from going to, oh, I'll never learn another language, to being able to learn one already is a big step for people, which I'm sure music can help with. So I'd like to ask you one last question. Well, so many more, but one last one for today. And are there songs is there a language that you don't speak, but that you really love the sound of it? You really love, music in it. A language you haven't studied yet, but the music, the sound of the language really appeals to you.
Well, I really love the sound of Italian, also Scandinavian countries, like Swedish. I watch a lot of Scandinavian series that are pretty good in detective films and so on. So I really like the sound of Scandinavian language. Even though I can't understand a word of it. I mean, sometimes it sounded a little bit like English. I mean, obviously it all comes from, the sort of same roots. I mean, you have, apart from that, a lot of African languages. I can't list them all, but even just talking about Kiswahili earlier, I think that it's a very beautiful language. I only know a couple of words, but it sounds really, really nice. Other languages don't sound, as appealing, but so to me, so certain African languages, Italian, Spanish, I know a little bit of Spanish, but it sounds great. But yeah, one day I'd like to try and speak Italian, just to, I like some sprezzatura, some, I can go to some Italian tailors and.
Well, you must have so many Italian words already with your piano studies. Without using it, you must have a whole bunch sitting there already. And with French and Portuguese, I'm sure it'll be a breeze to learn.
That's right. It's true that it's quite close. Although it might be a little bit confusing first.
Yeah.
I know that some friends of mine studied Spanish and Italian kept confusing words because sometimes it sounds similar, but it's not, and so it might be a little bit confusing. So that's why I'm just focusing right now purely on Portuguese. I'm even trying to forget about my Spanish. I only studied for 1 year, but that was a long time ago. But it comes back. So I'm trying to forget about the Spanish because I don't want to mix up the different languages.
Yeah, Spanish and Portuguese can be a little confusing, that's for sure. And have you listened much to, so yeah, Italy, they have a ton of jazz festivals. That was one thing I wanted to say for you. And then also, have you listened much to Ethiopian jazz, like Ethio jazz pianists?
So Ethiopian, I'm not sure, but there was a while ago I was listening to, I can't remember the name. It was a trio. I don't remember the name, but yeah, I've listened to some African jazz. And, I just love the rhythm, and I love fusion. I love music that pushes the different boundaries, and it might be a bit controversial these days, but I don't necessarily believe in cultural appropriation or whatever. To me, art is about appropriation. It all depends on the intention.
Yeah.
It's all about taking an idea and seeing, okay, where else can we take it? So yeah, that's certainly what we do in magic as well. There's no copywriting. There's no way of copywriting a trick. The only way of copywriting it is by putting it out there and release it, as in release it commercially. But then it doesn't really belong to us, because it's only an idea of, if I want to make this pen disappear, I've got all sorts of ways of doing that. But obviously I did not create the pen. I only created a way of making it disappear, using my hands, and it's all sleight of hand anyway. So it's just an idea, but by putting it out there, then maybe somewhere, someday, someone will look at that idea and say, well, actually, we can do something else with that. And I think that I love, the idea of doing this with music and languages, and so I can see a world where people will, one day learn about all the different languages, all the different cultures. And it won't be about appropriation. It will be about, putting your soul out there and exchanging.
It makes me think of what you said about instrumental music and the melodies of different languages. I really feel that even if a language is instrumental, that culture has an imprint on it, whether it's the scales that they're using or the rhythms that they're using. So it's even kind of beyond words. So if you hear, Ethiopian music, and it's Ethiopian, it's that Ethio jazz. I feel that even listening to instrumental music from the cultures that contain the languages you're trying to learn can be helpful. There's a really great book called The African Imagination in Music by Kofi Agawu, and he talks about how music, a lot of the African music wouldn't exist were it not from the languages first. So how music is born of the languages. And that, I feel that's really kind of a chicken and egg question, but beautiful.
Absolutely. I mean, music is a language in and of itself. So it's certainly, and the idea for me of listening to instrumental music is the fact that, because it's not tied to a particular set of lyrics, the meaning can change every day, depending on your mood, depending on, you can listen to, a piece by Beethoven or any other type of music. It could be African music, or, it all depends on your mood. Yeah, maybe one day you're heartbroken and you're like, oh, this, that's what this song is about. Then the next day feel better, and you're like, oh, okay, now it's an uplifting song, and it just encapsulates all of human experience. To me, that's what the best songs are about, the ones that can really encapsulate all the human experience, and something that we can all relate to. Like we all know what it's like to have a broken heart, to be uplifted, to be and I think it's. That's what I love about jazz, for example, because it's so many emotions at the same time.
The universal language. But I would like to wish you a very happy birthday, parabéns, for next week in advance. And I really hope this amazing sounding intergalactic festival that you're going to is everything you hope, with musicians and astrophysicists, and it sounds like it's going to be magic for sure. And muito obrigada for your time today and for sharing.
Você.
sharing this insight into the magical and musical workings of your mind. Much appreciated. And bada bings.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Speak soon. And where can people stay informed if you have a show or if you're
most of my shows are private shows. I do corporate events, private events of all kinds, birthday parties, mainly for an adult audience, but all sorts of shows. But you can go on the website, which is mindfarer.com. And I also have a band, which is called Sonic Winter. And so we're on pretty much all the different platforms, so you can check it out. And we've got the new single coming out on the 7th of June, so I'm quite excited about that. So yeah.
So between Mindfarer and Sonic Winter, we can stay in touch with your music, your magic, and your 2 books coming out very soon.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
I don't know what else to do with my life, music, magic, writing books.
Quite a lot already. But thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Obrigada. Thanks to those who listened, and we'll see you very soon. Languages to music.